Hey, Stephanie, good morning.
Hey, Rinnie, what's up?
Hey, can I tell you about last night?
Sure.
I came home and you know that big project I've been working on and that we have that deadline looming?
Yeah.
I was just feeling so overwhelmed and a little anxious. But every time I looked at the work for the project, I turned on the TV and I binged watched a couple hours of a silly family drama. What do you make of that?
I say, welcome to the panic side. That's what it means to be human.
Good morning, everyone in podcast land. My name is Rinnie Orr, and along with being the associate director and a mindset coach and a business coach, I wanted to let you all know that I'm also an artist.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Terry. I'm the executive director of Web Squared, and I'm many, many things, but mindset is one of the passions that I have had my entire life because it's my mindset that I've been working on my entire life. So we're super excited to be here with you to talk about all the mindset stuff that we do at Web.
And speaking of mindset, last week we talked about 3 zones of awareness. Stephanie, can you recall what they are and catch us up?
Yes, I can, because right now I'm in comfort, I'm chilling, I'm not nervous, I'm not worried about doing this podcast, it's all good. And then the next zone of awareness is stretch, and that's when you're growing and excited about learning. And sometimes you may come across things that make you feel a little uncomfortable, but you're in a good place until you start moving past stretch to it gets really touchy and you go into panic zone. And that's when you've either been triggered or you feel overwhelmed or you feel very anxious. And so that's the zone that we're going to talk about today.
And that's the zone I was feeling last night.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was being funny, but it's really not. It's a part of what we call being human. It's a part of our design.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that design in a future podcast. Like, why do we go into panic zone? And why do we have the reactions that we have, through the cycle of socialization concept? And we'll be talking about that soon. But today I wanted to just touch base about the panic zone. And we learned recently there are 4 reactions that we might find when we are in a panic.
Yeah, and those reactions, not to say that you only do one way, because
Mm-hmm.
depending on the circumstances, depending on the type of panic, depending on how long you're in the panic, you may find yourself delving in all 4. But most likely, there's kind of one mode that's kind of like a go-to
Mm-hmm.
when you get in panic mode, when you get overwhelmed or you get triggered about something and you do the thing that you do to just kind of like protect yourself. So, Rennie, you want to share what the modes are?
Yeah, there are 4, and it could be that you're in a continuum of several of these at once. It doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm in one or the other. You could find that maybe you're kind of like straddling 2 at a time, or maybe even 3. But the 4 zones are: you withdraw, and you kind of like go into a cocoon, and you kind of just kind of escape from whatever you're trying to, whatever's coming up for you. um, Another reaction is the inner critic that lives in our minds might start blaming and attacking yourself, telling you that it's your fault that this is happening. Another reaction is avoidance. That could be like, instead of tackling the problem, you decide to go and have a drink at the bar, or you go and work out for 2 or 3 hours, or you come home and you binge watch 6 hours of TV. And last but not least, is kind of like the opposite of attacking self is to kind of blame and kind of like attack other people who might be in your orbit. Maybe they're the cause of the stress, or maybe they're not the cause, but you're just taking it out on them because the person that you're wanting to attack, you can't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just described me. I'm definitely an attack others. But here's the thing, like, not just for your work, but I'm thinking more about like your work relationships, whether it be colleagues or employees or, even at home, your relationships at home or just your relationships, period. It's really been for me a very powerful tool to understand these reactions in the panic zone, and then even understand and complement it with the zones of awareness, because it helps me to like communicate better, understand myself better, and also be better in relationships, especially the relationships that are like super important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said a little bit about kind of when you react to the panic that you attack maybe others. I'm on the other end of maybe kind of withdrawing a bit and letting my inner critic attack myself and blame myself for what's happening. Rarely do I blame other people for something going wrong. It's just like, oh my gosh, how did I mess up so badly? Like what's wrong with me? Why do I do that? Um, and there are probably reasons, like from just childhood and the way we were raised and our environments that we found ourselves in as kids, that we react in certain ways, and it's a self protection.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains are trying to protect us, even if they send us off in the wrong direction.
Yeah, so the good thing about that, I think the first thing that's great about it is just being aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
of your own self, right? And then I know what has improved our communication is also being aware of each other, or like me being aware of where you go when you get in panic, and you being aware of where I may instinctively go when I get in panic, actually helps us navigate out of the panic and not do the thing to keep us staying in the panic zone longer. Because the goal is to not stop the panic. Sometimes you just can't, but it's to not stay there as long as you would normally do. So
Yeah.
the less time you can spend in that zone, it means you're growing and you're changing and you're maturing and you're developing skill sets so that you can have smoother
Mm-hmm.
communication, smoother relationships, smoother life.
Yeah, and one of the metaphors we've used early on is that these are programs. They're like computer programs, that have been developed, and that maybe there's bugs in the programs that help us react, or that aid in the reacting that we do. Um, so I'm just wondering, Stephanie, do you feel there are any hacks, like like reprogramming, that we can do when we find ourselves in one of these zones to help us move from the panic to the maybe to a more stretchy zone, or even to a comfort zone?
Yes, there's so many hacks, and I'm grateful for that. Like, we do not have to be kind of chained to
Mm-hmm.
our reactions. So the very first hack is, when you feel yourself panicky or anxious, or just, definitely not in a comfortable place and not in a stretched place, but like in a very, this is not a good place. The very first hack is to be aware of it. So instead of like, doing a bunch of stuff, just stop and say, where am I? How am I feeling? and be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that with some breaths, like that is so huge. Breathing it does so much. And we're going to get into that. And I think in our later podcast, we're going to talk about what breathing does to our nervous system, our glandular system, like all the neurological and physiological systems that I don't even know if that's the right word. So excuse me, y'all. I'm not a scientist, but I do study some of this stuff. But breathing is huge, and then there's some actual other things that we're going to share with you. We're excited to share with you in our next podcast to kind of help you quickly, because sometimes you need to be quick because you need to get something done, or you may be in the middle of talking to somebody or whatever, and you don't need to make anything worse. So we're going to share some hacks on what you can do to get out the panic zone and get back into the stretch zone.
Yeah. As somebody who kind of goes into the withdrawal and my brain attacks me a lot and blames me for a lot of things, one thing I've learned to do is to kind of keep a reminder of where do I feel most comfortable. And when you're at your most comfortable zone, you can't really do wrong, And so one of the things I like to do as a hobby of mine is to go bird watching. I have a phrase like, I can't do bird watching wrong. You're out there and you're looking at the birds through the binoculars, and you're walking and you're meeting other bird watchers, and they're all happy. It just really takes you out of the zone or the reaction into a different zone. And just to find things like that for yourself that you can remind yourself, like, hey, I can't bake cookies wrong. Or, hey, I can't, drive up to the coast and jump in the ocean wrong. There are all kinds of things that you can do to remind yourself about where your comfort zone is.
Yeah, that's a great one, Rinnie.
So thank you, Stephanie. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, that was really good. I'm glad we're having this conversation, especially with everything that's going on everywhere. Like these are the conversations we need to be having, how to cope.
And like next week, let's deep dive a little bit more into like how our brains work and why we react the way we do. We'll be exploring a concept called the cycle of socialization. Briefly, Stephanie, why is it important to know about this cycle?
Because we're all a part of it all the time. We're being socialized every single day and every moment, and we've been socialized from the day that we were born. And when we don't remember that, oh my gosh, everything becomes more difficult. So we're going to understand that cycle. We're also going to go a little bit deeper into it and understand how our brains use that information to inform our very unconscious responses that may be triggers sometimes, the very thing that we were talking about.
Well, before we sign off today, Stephanie and I would like to introduce our new gratitude segment. Each week, we will lift up groups, organizations, individuals who help us make a difference in this work that we do. Stephanie, who would you like to lift up today?
I'm going to lift up Elise Polly from NC Growth as the organization. We had an amazing conversation last week about partnerships, and she introduced me to another amazing organization that I will share about a little bit later. And for an individual, I want to lift up two people. I want to lift up Carol Peppy Hewitt, who's on our board, who helped me. She gave me a hack when I was in panic mode.
Oh, great.
She told me, yeah, she was like, stop catastrophizing. What is that word, Rinnie?
Catastrophic thinking.
Yes, that word. And she like brought it to my awareness, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. So I want to shout out Carol for giving me a really great mindset hack intervention. And I want to shout out one of our amazing entrepreneurs, Tony. What's Tony's last name?
Tony Grant.
Grant. I thought it was Grant. Yeah, I want to shout out Tony Grant. We've been having some really fabulous coaching sessions. And definitely when I meet with her, I'm in a really beautiful comfort / stretch. So shout out to Tony. What about you, Rinnie?
Well, I just want to give a heartfelt gratitude, moment of gratitude for Brittany Zimmer. Brittany's been our summer intern, and she's been working with us through the nonprofit internship program of North Carolina, which we participated in on the generosity of Z. Smith Reynolds, one of our funding partners.
Yes.
So we were very happy. I guess this is also gratitude for Z. Smith Reynolds. But Brittany has helped us with various projects, our upcoming events, and she also reached out to all of our entrepreneurs to showcase their businesses on our Facebook page. And I'm happy to announce Brittany has started her own business. She's a budding entrepreneur, and it's called Brittany Kimmer's Management Services, offering event planning, content creation, social media management, and much more, all the things that she was doing for us this summer. So Brittany,
awesome.
On behalf of WEBB, we thank you very much.
Thank you, Brittany. You have been awesome. And thank you, Z. Smith Reynolds, for sending us Brittany. We're super grateful.
So I think, Stephanie, that's a wrap.
Yep, it sure is. And you know what we say at the end of whenever we do what we do? Evolution begins with dialogue.
Thank you for listening to the Remedy Podcast, a mindset shifting project of WEBB Squared. Wealth Through Entrepreneurship for Black and Brown Businesses is a North Carolina nonprofit located in Chatham County. We offer incubator, accelerator business services to Black and BIPOC entrepreneurs. Our podcast hosts are Stephanie Terry and Rinnie Orr, the co-founders of WEBB. We realize that building an ecosystem of support is critical to achieving our mission. Your donation to WEBB Squared supports the podcast, WEBB's coaching services, and the promotion of the businesses and entrepreneurs we serve. To learn more about WEBB Squared, please visit our website at webbsquared.org.